business is fundamentally a spiritual adventure.
Amen.
It starts by faith, and it's sustained by faith, and it's going to require faith at every junction and at every level to keep on going, and it's going to pull the very best out of you. You know, I think the beautiful thing about entrepreneurship is not the money you make, because the money is a metric of the value that you can create and bring to others. It's a way of measuring how much value brought to others.
That's right.
You become a bigger, better, wiser, stronger, taller, smarter version of yourself just because you embarked on the journey of creating value for others. And how wonderful is that?
Yeah, and the journey, you know, is learning how to serve more people better.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, welcome to Success on Repeat. Welcome back, folks, to Success on Repeat. Thank you so much. What a blessing it is to have you tuning in. I am still in Clearwater Beach, Florida at the Wyndham Grand Hotel, suffering for the Lord. You know, it's a good life, right? But somebody's got to live it. You know what I mean? It's living the dream, as they say. We got the beach actually right over here over my shoulder. And I'm sitting today with Bishop Wayne Malcolm. Bishop, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
What an awesome opportunity for me. I feel very blessed. I've seen you, because I got into Myron's circle, Myron Golden, I've been introduced to you a little bit. Now I've kind of started to glean a little bit. So I appreciate you taking the time to sit down.
Thank you.
And spend some time with us. So I want to introduce you to our audience. Obviously, you're from across the pond, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, the large pond.
The large pond, over in the UK. We've traversed the pond several times, going back and forth to Israel, but I've never made it to the UK. So we might have to come and visit. I've heard.
I think so.
I was talking to Daniel Priestley, and he was saying that you gotta come and experience it for yourself.
Oh, absolutely.
So tell me about your current business. You know, obviously with Success on Repeat, we're always trying to highlight success and show others how they too can kind of participate in success, which I think is a decision, right? You just decide to go and participate. So tell us about your current state of business and what you got going on right now.
Okay, well, I'm Bishop Wayne Malcolm, otherwise known as the Business Bishop.
The Business Bishop.
We'll get into how I got dubbed that and why I embraced it, and it's now pretty much become our brand. But I am in the business success coaching field, and so my clients are entrepreneurs. In many cases, they're solopreneurs. You know, they've had a dream and stepped out to try to build something. And they're just at the stage now where it's a bit overwhelming, taking away from them some of the freedoms they hoped it would give them. And they're now needing to scale, and they're needing to implement some systems that slowly but surely deliver the freedoms that they wanted in the beginning. So I do take my clients through a process that delivers that sort of breakthrough and transformation. I absolutely love doing it. I love my clients, and apparently they love me too.
That's good. That's good. So okay, so this person that you're dealing with, I think about kind of the adage or the kind of the meme that I've seen out there in the marketplace is, you quit your 40-hour-a-week job, working 40 hours, right, to start your own business so you can work all the time, and you fire one boss so that you can pick up, 100 bosses, because, every single client, now you work for them, and what's funny is those memes, I feel like they put out a tongue-in-cheek representation of what, the reality of starting your own business is, especially in the beginning. But I think what people aren't getting out of that meme is the payoff on the other end, right? You don't start the business for the 100 bosses that you traded for the one boss, or the 100 hours that you traded for the 40 hours. You start a business for an ultimate, dream, and so what does that look like, that freedom? Because you and I were just talking about freedom and...
Yeah, absolutely. So I think most people who go into business are in pursuit of freedom. Right. But if we were to define that freedom, I think of it as the 4 freedoms. All right. So it's financial freedom. Right. But it's also time freedom. Because what's the point of having all the money
if you got no time?
You've got no time. Right. It is the freedom of mobility Okay, that is the freedom to go where you want, when you want, stay as long as you want. All right, because time freedom in the same location is pretty much a prison sentence. right.
Okay. I can have as much recreational time as I want.
Yeah.
As long as I stay in this cage.
So that freedom of mobility is very important, and then ultimately freedom of expression. And what I mean by freedom of expression is the life and the lifestyle that suits the person that you are. Okay, it's the house you want to live in, it's the car you want to drive, it's the clothes you want to wear, it's the hobbies and recreations you want to be involved in. Ultimately, when people go into business, they see it as a vehicle that can deliver those freedoms. The problem is that if you do business the wrong way, right, it takes all those freedoms.
It does, every single one of them.
It takes your money, it takes your time, it takes your freedom of mobility, and it takes your freedom of expression, because you're now tied to these tasks.
Right.
So. And I guess
that's a great point.
And I guess it's not the fault of the entrepreneur, right? Because we're not really taught entrepreneurship in the system. Certainly the school system, the educational system is a factory. Actually, it was originally called the factory school system. It is a factory that's designed to mass produce a workforce. Right? So you're conditioned to think like an employee. You're conditioned to behave that way. And therefore, if you do have good entrepreneurial ideas, they're not typically coming from the school system. They're coming from somewhere else, either something you've observed in a relative or a friend, or something that you've read about.
Right.
And so it's very easy to go into it with the wrong idea. All right. So the right idea, put quite simply, is that the only thing that delivers the 4 freedoms to an entrepreneur is a business system. Okay.
Right.
So what we try to do is help entrepreneurs think about building this system, and then we look at the components of a business system that can ultimately deliver the freedoms that you wanted when you went into business in the first place, and not overnight. It does take a while. We want to be realistic about the time involved, and also appreciate the time involved, because the time you spend as a solopreneur or self-employed is also a useful education. It's going to help you to set your systems up in a way that reflects your own values as you begin to delegate and put succession plans in place.
Because you always reap after you sow.
Correct.
Right. So that time you're spending is sowing of seeds. Right. And then those seeds grow into whatever your business systems are. But you had to sow something into it in order to reap something out of it.
Absolutely. And so when it comes to, for example, perhaps what is probably the number one or the biggest psychological barrier for a solopreneur becoming a pure entrepreneur, or let's say the business operator becoming a business owner. Which is a fundamental difference.
Right? I'm intimately like, this is, I'm not saying, I'm probably somewhere in the middle there, right? So we've got systems, we've got, delegation, we've got employees, but there's another level of releasing like decision making and things. There's a whole nother level.
Precisely. So the number one barrier is really a psychological barrier because we believe that no one can do it like us, right? We expect to dilute the quality when we delegate, right? We're expecting that, no one's going to do it the way that we do it. Now, of course, you can guarantee that they do it the way you do it, and you can guarantee that they do it even better, right? But that's a process that comes from you documenting your process, almost reverse engineering and codifying what you're doing. So if you initially were the person that answered all the calls, that followed up all the leads, and that closed all the sales, at some point you need to become that objective observer of what you're actually doing and actually document that, because that's eventually going to become your standard operating procedure, your SOP. So when you actually do bring someone into the role, you're able to not just give them like the basic introduction and then hope that they do well. You say, look, these are the things that we've learned over several years of me doing this myself. The lessons I learned, what works, and the standard I want you to operate to. And that's why those years are useful, and not to be taken for granted.
Sure. I mean, I can just think of, and this is maybe a silly comparison, but I ripped a couple bathrooms in my house to the studs. And when you do that, you got to put them back together.
Yeah. That would be a good idea.
So I ended up putting them back together. And what that gave me was now an intimate understanding of the jobs themselves. So when I hire contractors and what now for future projects, I know whether they're doing it right or not. I know whether it's up to the standard that I want. I know if they're taking shortcuts or not, rather than just, here's some money and then just, which maybe there's some merit to that too, but
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I guess it's, the first transition for a solopreneur is operational. Right. You need to exit the business operationally.
Yeah.
And you can only do that with a team. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's staff, it's software, things like that allow you to exit operationally to where you can now work on the business as opposed to simply in the business.
In the business, yeah.
Now, there'll still be parts of the business that you love working, so you're still going to work in the business somewhat.
Yeah.
But you at least have good bandwidth for how this business looks, okay, and how it's structured.
Sure.
And then, as you were saying, there's another exit. There's the whole strategic exit, right? Where you are actually now hiring better minds than you, people who understand the components of the business, whether it's the marketing, the sales, whether it's production, fulfillment, the administration, whatever these key components are, these key functions are, you're now looking for people who are much better than you at that.
Yeah.
And that involves giving up some of your ideas.
Yeah.
And that's another hard thing, right? Yeah. Giving up your ideas, okay? Whilst keeping your signature, and your values and your mission intact. So there are various levels of exiting the business, but I guess the mystery, if there is a mystery to it, is that it grows the more you get out of its way.
Yeah. So the less work I do, the better it goes. The more money you make.
It grows. You got to get out of your own way.
Get out of your way. No, it's 100% true. I mean, so obviously I own a payment processing firm, and from an operations standpoint, just down to like client files for documentation and things like that. I had this system that I used, and not for nothing, I'm an entrepreneur, obviously, so we're naturally a bit ADD, Mm-hmm. They call it attention deficit disorder, which I think is a misnomer because it means that I can give my attention to a lot of different things at the same time, right? Like, which can be a blessing and a curse,
Yeah.
Well, I just remember just one experience with that is I had a filing system, electronic, but I had a naming convention and everything, and I had a way that I did it, And then when I brought in an operations person, they had a completely different way, and they reorganized everything.
Yeah.
And it was like,
what are you doing?
Who moved my cheese? Like, have you ever read the book Who Moved My? Yeah, it is. Right. And even like silly things where like I'll capitalize certain letters in my naming convention, which has nothing to do with anything. It is, other than just the visual aesthetic of it and me being OCD on it. So there were some times where I had to literally just like leave the room and go twitch somewhere else because I knew it was better to empower someone else, right? And I had to be intentional about it because I don't want to say emotionally, it's not necessarily emotionally, but like my natural tendency would have been like, no, do it my way, And I'm thankful that I did not do that because ultimately then they're not stuck in this thought process. Well, I can't do anything until I talk to Ryan.
Oh, that's horrible, man.
Which is horrible.
Yeah, it's not freedom. It's not why you went into business in the first place.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So, all right. So I want to change gears a little bit. We've got entrepreneurs and people that we deal with. For us as a payment processing firm, we serve three main folks. We serve business owners that take payments, and that's a lot of different industries.
Yeah.
Referral partners that are in other business industries that serve businesses. So it could be commercial insurance or e-com consultants or whatever, but they serve businesses and so they refer us in. And then, and then the last is our agents, people that want to become like us. They want to start a full, payment processing firm of their own and be an agent and go out and sell our products and services. But we do the back end, heavy lifting for them. Yeah. So those are kind of the three main folks that we serve. And when I'm working with them, right, we talk a lot about money. And not for nothing, if you watch our channel long enough, God's going to be mentioned, the Bible's going to be mentioned. It's who I am. So then it's just part of what comes out, right? And the fact that biblical principles and applying biblical principles to my life have given me all of my success, not some of my success, any success that I can even claim. And a lot of that success is non-monetary success, right? It's my marriage, it's my children, it's my faith, right? My health, all of it. But money specifically seems to be the thing that people get hung up on a lot. And I even still, right? Like it's funny. We were asked the question recently, what's a lot of money to you? And you write down a number, right? And somebody said $1 billion. My number was lower than $1 billion. When I think of a lot of money, I was like, but then you want to put the word only in front of it, And so what I realized is that even though maybe my mindset has elevated to a certain point, there's still more levels to the elevation. So what is it in your perception? And I've heard you talk about this before, but I want our audience to kind of get the benefit that you perceive is holding the faith community back, Christians, believers in Jesus, Bible believers from, the hangups they have about money, business, success, all those types of things.
Okay. Well, at the risk of sounding like I'm sermonizing. Right?
Yeah, listen, please.
I'm going to give some context.
Preach, you're good.
I'm going to give some context, a little bit of introduction.
I know where we're going. The introduction's always longer than the sermon.
Yeah. So, I mean, it really is my story. So I started my professional life in financial services.
Okay.
All right. So I worked with a multinational financial services company, and I sold products for them, financial products, right? So whether that was mortgages or pensions or insurance plans, and just a suite of financial services.
Okay.
And I started my professional life there. In other words, I was 18 years old. I was given an opportunity to work with the company. They taught me everything I needed to know, but we were self-employed. We were not employed by the company. We worked with the company.
Yeah.
So it was commission only. Right?
Yeah.
So we got paid if we made sales.
Yeah.
So obviously the chap who managed our particular agency, our particular branch, he understood that we were not going to generate any sales unless we were highly motivated and skillful.
Right.
So he invested a lot in our personal development and taught us to value personal development.
Interesting.
So at a very early age, I was reading success classics.
What a blessing, right? Yeah.
So I was reading Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn, Napoleon Hill, Norman Vincent Peale. I was reading that stuff at 18, 19 years old.
Fantastic.
Now, I had gotten saved, all right? I was born again at 15.
Okay.
From a very deviant lifestyle. So if I was to describe to you the things that I got up to at 15, you would never look at a 15year-old the same way ever again.
Yeah, right? Not in the UK. Right? I thought you guys were all just,
Oh, did you?
All chat.
Okay. So anyway, my life had turned around. It was a bit of a blank sheet before me professionally, and I was given this opportunity. As a result of that opportunity, I became aware of this world of success psychology, motivational psychology,
right?
Daring to dream, living the dream.
Yeah.
All of these phrases became part of my own psychology.
Daring to dream.
Yeah. So I gave way at about 21 years old to my deepest passion, which was ministry. Okay?
Yeah.
So, I went to Bible school. I started preaching. I was considered a boy preacher. And the culture of the church at that time created for me conflict, right? So there was part of me that really believed that you could be who you wanted to be, do what you wanted to do, have what you wanted to have.
Yeah.
If you practice certain principles, right? There was another side of me saying, this world is not my home.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
I'm a stranger, I'm a pilgrim.
Yeah.
And I've got to be ready for the imminent evacuation of all believers from this world.
That's right.
Okay?
Yeah.
And that I should not lay up for myself treasures on earth where moth and rust would corrupt it.
That's right.
But treasures in heaven.
Yeah.
And we overdosed in the church setting on scriptures that would appear at a surface reading to cast negative connotations on money, wealth, riches, economic empowerment, all of that, right? So it's easy for the camel to go through the eye of the needle, and for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. The love of money was the root of all evil.
Yeah.
And so I was conflicted, right? Because in my church life, I could preach the gospel and bring people to Christ. In my business life, I was telling people to dream about a future that part of me didn't even believe existed.
Right, because we're going to be evacuated.
The Great Tribulation, the Antichrist is going to take it all. You're soon not going to be able to buy or sell without the mark.
That's right. Yeah.
So these were all the conflicts going on in my head at a very early age, and I had to work through that.
It's funny, my son's here with us. He does the video stuff. He and I actually have this conversation about because we prophecy teachers and stuff. I mean, if they were talking about it back then, look, they've got TV and the internet now. They're still blasting the same message, right? The imminent return of Christ and the Great Tribulation and all this. So, I don't mean to interrupt.
Well, absolutely. So, I became aware of some internal conflict.
Yeah.
Okay. There was a difference between what I believed at a conscious level and seeds that had been sown at an unconscious level, and there was a battle going on.
Yeah.
And I knew it needed to be resolved.
Right.
Okay. So I did go on a bit of a search, right, in order to find out why it is that that the church was so divided when it came to this matter. So long story short, I reached some conclusions which were finally cemented for me by a Jewish rabbi. Okay.
It's so funny. I was just thinking hypocrisy is the leaven of the Pharisees, right? That's what just came to my mind. And thinking about, and the reason that I think that is what you're finding in Christian life is the life we have this desire to live, and all these other truths that seem to be over here. And then this other seemingly, opposed truth from the Bible. And you're like, what? I don't understand. It doesn't match. They both seem true. Right. Yeah. And now if I live this way, am I a hypocrite over here? And if I do this over here, am I a hypocrite? You have this issue. So I was just thinking hypocrisy being the leaven of the Pharisees, and then you bring up a Jewish rabbi. Interesting.
Well, yeah, he was life-changing for me, and I'll mention him in just a few moments. But I just begin to notice some things in the Bible for myself.
Sure.
For example, I noticed that most of our faith heroes, if not all of our faith heroes, commanded great wealth or were very wealthy.
Yep.
Right. So, in fact, I decided I would reread the Bible with economic spectacles on, so that I could estimate or guesstimate the economic implications of every move of God, every promise of God, every intervention of God, and everything that God did in the Bible. I was going to put a number on it.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
just to consider its economic implications.
Yeah. Yeah.
And wow, it was quite shocking to say the least. So I found out that Abraham was very, very rich. He wasn't just rich; he was very rich.
Yeah.
And he wasn't just spiritually rich, he was rich in silver, gold, and cattle.
Yeah.
I found out that Joseph actually was paid for his services in Egypt in terms of an entire country, the land of Goshen.
Yeah.
Right, the whole territory, capable of housing millions of people.
Right.
I know that the children of Israel left Egypt with great riches, enough gold to build a golden calf, to build the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah, gold that turns itself into a calf. You just throw it in the fire.
Overlay so much of the tabernacle with gold. The high priest's garments were just laced with precious gems and gold. I'm thinking, hold on a second. So as you go on, you start to see faith heroes who we tell our children to model.
Right.
And they're actually rich.
Oh yeah.
So this debunked the first myth that you had to choose between rich and righteous. Right?
Interesting.
If you had to choose, I'm either going to be rich or I'm going to be righteous, which is what the culture was putting out at the time.
Right.
Then the Bible don't make any sense because so many of the righteous were very rich.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And then I realized that the Bible was written in an entrepreneurial culture, to an entrepreneurial culture.
Right,
in other words, it wasn't, there were no social services, there was no social safety net, there was no welfare state.
Right.
And the only people that had jobs were slaves and soldiers. Everyone else took a skill to market, or they leveraged an opportunity.
Even the Proverbs
they
31
were fishing,
woman.
They were farming, or they were leveraging a skill set, and they were bringing value to market, exchanging it for value. And so all of the commercial wisdom of the Bible was all aimed at entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
All of the advice, the Proverbs, I mean, there's so much in the Proverbs dealing with prosperity, but it's all aimed at entrepreneurs
100%.
because everyone else, because that was the culture, that was the age. And if you have the opportunity to go to an emerging country, and I do some work with some NGOs in some emerging countries, you see the same thing.
Right.
There's no middle class. There's no social safety net. There's no welfare state.
Right.
You have to make something of value and bring it to market, or you're not going to survive.
Yeah, and
right?
it's community living. Yeah,
so even if you're going to paint rocks and sell them on the side of the road, okay, that's how you lived, right?
Right.
So I realized that was the culture of the scriptures. So I began to see the scriptures very differently. And because I saw the scriptures differently, I realized that some of the passages that we were overdosed on couldn't mean what we were told they meant,
right,
if the rest of the Bible's true.
100%.
Because theologically, and I have a theological qualification, right? If you believe in the inspiration of Scripture, then the Bible has perfect harmony of doctrine and does not contradict itself. Your interpretation may contradict
100%.
itself, but it in its pure meaning doesn't contradict itself.
Right.
So it couldn't mean the love of money is the root of all evil. Couldn't mean what they were telling me it meant.
Right.
If some of God's friends were rich.
Yeah.
So the righteous were rich.
Yeah.
And God was enriching the righteous.
Right.
And promising them riches. Something was wrong with that, with the interpretation of that.
Yeah,
so,
and Eve, there was no money involved in that sin.
Right. So it couldn't mean all evil because there was definitely lots of things people could do that were evil that had nothing to do with money.
Exactly right. 100%.
So this meant, look, I have to go back through these passages. I have to go into the Greek. I have to go into the original context. I have to look at the nuances and the idioms that were being represented and expressed there. And then in the end, what you see is this. You reach this very simple conclusion, right? Money is not inherently evil. Neither is it inherently neutral. It is inherently good.
Yes.
And this is what my Jewish rabbi friend said to me.
Yeah.
He said, Wayne, you inherited a disadvantage that I didn't. So I said, what do you mean, Rabbi? He said, well, in my religion, money is good. He said, what? It was just the peace with which he said it.
Yeah. You're like, wait a second. I just want to make sure you said what I think you said.
Yeah. He said, in my religion, money is good.
Okay.
And he said, look, if you become wealthy by serving your fellow humans, he said, not only is that good, not only is that noble, not only is that virtuous, he said, it's inherently moral and it's my religious duty. He said, I have a moral obligation to do that. It's my religious duty.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
who else is going to take care of my family and friends or the people that I care about or the causes I care about?
Well, if you have no capacity to match your compassion, then your compassion is just empty words. The Good Samaritan, he didn't just have compassion.
Yeah, man.
He had capacity. He had bandages.
Yeah.
He had oil. He had wine. He had a vehicle.
That's right.
He had money to pay for the inn.
That's right.
To pay for the medical care. And he had good credit.
I'm about to say, he had good enough credit. Yeah. I'll be back. I'm going to pay you if I need to.
So he was a man of capacity. He wasn't just a man of compassion. So again, all of these things begin to come together for me, and I begin to understand why it was in the devil's interest to convince us, spiritual people, that money is a bad thing that you should avoid. Right? Or that it has this corrupting influence on anyone. And it doesn't. It's an amplifier. Yes, it will expose what might be lurking in your heart, but it doesn't convert.
Right.
So that was the backdrop to why I'm very happy helping my clients make more and more money.
Yeah.
Why I do not feel apologetic about being rich or about aspiring to being even more wealthy.
Yeah.
Okay.
It says a righteous man,
that conflict.
Right, leaves an inheritance
Proverbs
to his
13.
children's children.
It says a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, which means that a good man, and that's the starting point, good in that passage means noble, virtuous, righteous.
Yeah.
There's something inherently moral about the person who has generational vision, generational goals, and a generational economic strategy to create platforms upon which his children's children can stand tall. That's noble.
Well, I feel like inside, I mean, as a father, that speaks, I mean, there's something inside of me that like, absolutely, like, yes, that's what I of course, that's what I want.
Yeah,
I want to.
And of course, to the culture in which that was spoken, it made perfect sense because God is generational, right? Yeah. So he's not just the God of Abraham. He's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. There are generations involved.
Wow, yeah.
Because his promises are too big. His promises and purposes are too big to squeeze into any one person's lifetime. So the patriarchs understood that. So they knew that when God makes you a promise, that actually you might not live to see its fulfillment, but you can trust he'll be faithful. He'll keep that covenant, that agreement with your children and with their children. And in their lifetime, they'll see the fulfillment of everything that God promised you. Yeah. And in the culture, they understood that. Today, we're beginning to recover some of those ideas.
Yeah, you know, I'll take it even one step further. Even you mentioned Jewish rabbi, amongst the Jewish people, the promises to Abraham, that's one of the reasons they believe in the resurrection. It's one of the cornerstones, is because Abraham never saw that promise come to fruition, that they believe, well, obviously God's going to resurrect him to show it to him, right? Because you know, and then obviously you get to the New Testament and you get to, you know, many will come from the East and the West, right? To sit at the table with who? Abraham. You know, Abraham's going to see the fulfillment of the promise. And I only imagine like how much bigger, like his imagination, right? No eye hath seen, no ear hath heard, right? What God has in store for those who love him. But like, I imagine Abraham's reaction when he sees like all of these people that you know are actual and spiritual descendants of him when he sits at that table, you know.
Absolutely,
like, man.
So I feel like I want to caveat something that I said, which, you know, or I want to just kind of cap off something that I said, that I reached the conclusion that money was not inherently evil. It wasn't even inherently neutral. It was inherently good.
Good, yeah.
Certainly that was the case before the fall. Yeah. Where gold is mentioned. Yeah. As good. Yeah. And gold is the universal symbol of wealth. Yeah. Right? So, but I want to say this, because there are some warnings in the scriptures, right? And if you look at the warnings versus the promises, here's the message, right? All right. Money is an inherently good servant. But an inherently evil master.
That is a good cat. You're right.
Money is your great servant. Yeah. But is a terrible master. Yeah. So you never make money your master, but you always make it your servant.
Yeah. Well, that's why when it says you can't serve two masters, you'll love one and hate the other, right? Exactly. It's referring specifically to Mammon, right? The god of of money or prosperity or whatever it was. And yeah, if you're serving the money, which oddly enough, you know, if I really think about the people that are citing these passages, right, that are looking at people of means or wealth and talking down about those people, they must have done something evil or whatever. They work 8, 10, 12 hours a day, 40, 60 hours for money. Yeah. And so really, other people who have mastered money and are using money as a servant, they're looking at them in a negative context, when in fact they're the ones who have money as a master, because they can't do anything without that. You know what I mean? They're stuck in that.
It's a very powerful observation. Yeah. It's a very powerful and very realistic observation that we can unknowingly be criticizing the rich. Yeah. While actually doing the very thing that Christ said not to do. Yeah. Which was to make money your master. Yeah. Because the rich have a secret psychology, right? And it's not a secret because it's in books. It's absolutely everywhere. Right, but it's just, for some reason, people just don't see it, right? Yeah. Money is a leverage. It's a tool. It's spiritual fundamentally. It's a unit of value. It's an idea. And once you get your head around it and say, okay, look, how am I going to make this work for me? Right. then the business becomes a way of making money work for you. Your investments become a way of making money work for you.
Yes.
Your networks and your professional relationships, they become a way of making money work for you.
Right.
And so long as you're conscious that actually I am first and foremost a servant of God, I'm a son of God.
Yeah.
That's who I am, first of all, and that's who my master is.
Yeah.
Everything else is at my service. So let's look at everything else as serving that purpose.
Right.
And that's cool. And so God never had a problem with Adam having everything.
Yeah.
He just had a problem with anything having Adam.
Right.
You know, you can have all this so long as I can have you.
Yeah.
That's all God really wants in this world is you.
Interesting. Yeah. No, that's
Everything else is yours.
And he's generous. And that's why he calls us as his sons to be generous ourselves.
Yeah.
And how that's an outcrop of the process, you know, that flow, because economics is all about the flow of money, not about the, you know, when it stagnates, that's a problem. You know, I mean, it's just the things that there's so many different things that this touches that all of a sudden, once you start flipping on one light switch, now you can see, and you're like, wow, so this is why all these things work together, because of, you know, this key piece that I was missing from before.
Yeah.
But I you know, it's funny because I was listening to Myron talk about this little thing about how much do you want, right? How much money do you want? Well, as much as the Lord will let me have, right? I mean, as much as I can get. Like, well, how much air do you want to breathe? Well, you know, how much, you know, I got to save some for somebody else, you know, how much food, right? So these silly things that we, when we don't put it in a godly biblical perspective, and we've bought into the twist that the enemy has brought in, because that's really what he does, right? He mingles the truth with the lie. And then that's why we get that internal feeling about wealth or money or riches as like, oh, that has to be evil, right? Because even when I was a kid, the cartoons showed, you know, Scrooge McDuck, the rich guy, as, you know,
Was always the evil one.
oh, and even if he wasn't evil, he was always the guy that was greedy, selfish, and nobody liked him, you know? Whereas as I've gotten older and matured and gotten in places where there's more wealthy people that are entrepreneurs that are, you know, doing things, and also believers, I'm finding like, man, these are good people. Like, these people aren't Scrooge McDuck, you know? These people are, and I find more Scrooge McDucks in the rest of the world than when I come to places like this where a bunch of entrepreneurs are gathered, you know, and it's just such a big difference, you know,
So true.
A very, very big difference that I never expected. Well, awesome. I really appreciate you spending time with me, man.
Man, I appreciate talking to you, man.
Yeah, it's been
a
great.
blessing.
We'll, you know, we'll stay connected and keep this going. I'd love to, you know, unpack even more things. We just don't have time for today, but, man, I'll close with, I think that like the guys that we serve, you know, the people that we serve in the business community, whether it's the merchants, the referral partners, or the agents, you know, the benefit to them is always a financial benefit. But what they don't realize sometimes, I think, because we don't realize it until we actually do that work of thinking, is the benefit is more than financial, because what we're doing is we're connecting people and processes, and it's that the outcrop of that is the money.
Yeah.
Right. It's a spiritual derivative of a seemingly menial task, and the reason that we are able to get money is because we're producing flow. I mean, payment processing is all about flow of money, right? We're producing flow, and opening up valves and channels for people that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise. Yeah. And so I never, you know, just till just now, I never really thought of it as, you know, because you always wonder like, where's the value, you know? And the value is in that the connections and the turning things on and off, you know, for folks. So I'll give you the last word. Any thoughts?
Yeah, well, you know, congratulations on your business and what you do, and on your podcast, and on your openness to have a spiritual conversation about money, and a spiritual conversation about business. Yeah. Because I guess for me, I reached the conclusion through much internal conflict.
Sure.
I reached the conclusion that business is fundamentally a spiritual adventure.
Amen.
It starts by faith, and it's sustained by faith, and it's going to require faith at every junction and at every level to keep on going, and it's going to pull the very best out of you. You know, I think the beautiful thing about entrepreneurship is not the money you make, because the money is a metric of the value that you can create and bring to others. It's a way of measuring how much value you've brought to others. But the real thing is the person you become on the journey.
Amen. Amen.
Because this journey pulls out of you virtues and resourcefulness that you never knew you had.
That's right.
You become a bigger, better, wiser, stronger, taller, smarter version of yourself just because you embarked on the journey of creating value for others. And how wonderful is that?
Yeah, and the journey, you know, is learning how to serve more people better.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
Praise God. Well, listen, guys, thank you so much for tuning in and spending time with Bishop Malcolm and I. And, you know, business is spiritual. Wealth is spiritual. These are all spiritual things. And we can talk tactics and strategies, but the important piece is you have to become the person that understands those things. And once you become that person, then you figure out the tactics and strategies. They're just like low-hanging fruit. It just falls out of your pocket as you're going by. And so I hope you guys are blessed by this conversation. I know I have been. I appreciate you, Bishop Malcolm. Bless you guys, and we will see you on the next one.